12 at SEC Collide at the All-State Sugar Bowl. Number 16, Oklahoma State. Number 12, Ole Miss. Coverage begins New Year's Day at 8:30 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
The topics are hot. The discussion is heated. The First Take Podcast starts now.
Here's what's coming up on the First Take Podcast. Does Houston have a problem with Dwight Howard? Plus, how far can Tom Brady carry a wounded Patriots offense? And was Big Ben the victim of a dirty hit? That and so much more coming up on the pod. Hey, welcome into First Take. Skip Bayless and Molly Karam here in Bristol, CT. Stephen A. joins us from NYC. Gentlemen, good morning. How are we doing?
Good morning. How y'all doing?
How are you doing? That's the big question. We're doing
busy
great.
Day, man.
Yeah.
Busy day, bro.
Yeah.
Got a lot of stuff to handle for the show and beyond, but I'm
right?
here because it does not matter, Skip. I'm here for you.
Just for
all
me?
that matters.
What about me?
I was Molly. I'm always there.
Oh, thank
I think
you.
more for her than
Thank
for me,
you.
but that's okay.
Oh,
I
stop
accept
being
it.
sensitive.
It's okay.
Stop being sensitive.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
but I hear you're actually in New York because you have a rendezvous with Mr. Will Smith. Is that true?
Okay, big time.
Okay.
That is correct.
He's big time,
That is
but
correct.
that's okay.
That is right. That's not big timing. That's not big timing. You could have been here. I'm here for you too. You know. Let's keep that in mind.
All
All right, so Stephen A. has a lot on the agenda, and so do we here on First Take. Let's get into it. Dwight Howard is extremely unhappy in Houston, playing second fiddle to James Harden, multiple league sources telling SheridanHoops.com. However, Howard called the report lies and said he has never expressed any dissatisfaction with his role and with the Rockets underachieving. The team may try to move Howard later this season, according to the report. Skip, how valuable is Howard right now?
Stephen A. Smith, to me, not very. To me, I wouldn't want Dwight Howard on my team right now, but allow me to preface what I'm saying by saying I am not blaming Dwight Howard completely for all that ails the Houston Rockets right now, who have fallen to 14 and 16 to the 7th seed in the West, inconceivably to me. But that's not all his fault. And to the point here, he may have a point, even though he didn't voice it after the game, that his man James Harden is hoisting up 20.2 shots per game. That's third most in the NBA. And Dwight's shots continue to fall. He's only taking 8.3 a game. Now, back to my premise. To me, Stephen A. Smith, given all that we all thought Dwight Howard could become in the National Basketball Association, given all that he nearly did become, because he was second in the MVP race in 2011, did get to one finals, as you recall, and lost to Kobe's team in 5 games, given all the hysteria that was created when Dwight, Willie or Woney, left Orlando, went to the Lakers, and all the further hysteria created when he left the Lakers and went to save, quote unquote, the Houston Rockets, not by his doing, but by public's doing. Everybody thought he would be the savior of the Rockets. To me, Dwight Howard has become the most overrated player I have ever observed. Given all that buildup, given all the expectations, this is a man who, to me, plays mostly with a low motor, mostly with low passion for the game of basketball. And if I may frame him in the DeMarcus Cousins new perspective, DeMarcus badly outplayed him last night in Sacramento. DeMarcus, for all of his off-the-court problems, DeMarcus plays with a passion, even a rage, if you will, that I never see from Dwight. I'm never sure Dwight really cares about much of anything except doing okay, looking okay, staying out of the crossfire and the spotlight, putting up decent stats, but if they win, it's like take it or leave it to Dwight Howard. That's my 2 cents from a distance. DeMarcus Cousins sometimes plays with over-the-top passion and sometimes out-of-control desire to win basketball games, but I still love that. And I still think DeMarcus is the best big man, as you do too, in basketball today. And if, in fact, the Miami Heat had a choice, if it came down to trading Hassan Whiteside and maybe a Justice Winslow for either a Cousins or Dwight, I am going Cousins all day, all night. Dwight is only now 30 years of age, but he has played 12 seasons. I'll throw this in. Remember, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was able to play until he was 42. as a big man, and Dwight could have a lot of big, good years left in him. I'm just done with him. I just wouldn't want him in the center of my team. I wouldn't want to have to feed off his lack of energy. So in the end, in my view, his market value would be very low right now.
Let's get a couple of things out of the way right now, Skip Bayless. If you remember when Dwight Howard made the decision to go to to go from Los Angeles to Houston.
Yep.
I was on vacation in the islands, and literally I had to come on SportsCenter, just so you know, Molly, I had to come on SportsCenter from the islands, okay, while I was on a boat traveling from one island to the other, as my man Stan Barrett would say, at a secret tropical location, because I never let anybody know where I'm going. Oh. While on that boat, I got a call from Dwight Howard because obviously people were saying he was flip-flopping, and he absolutely positively was not flip-flopping. He had made the decision to go to Houston. I pretty much knew weeks in advance he was going to go to Houston because that's what I had been hearing, albeit not from him. And then in the aftermath of all of that, once he decided to go to Houston, I was there at his press conference that following weekend, and I did a one-on-one interview with him for SportsCenter. Skip, I'm sure you recall that.
I do.
Having said all of that, I bring that up to point this out. I know Dwight Howard a little bit. Skip Bayless, I don't find him to be a liar. If he says that it's a lie, that he's extremely unhappy playing second fiddle to James Harden, I think that part is a lie.
Okay.
I will
Fair
acknowledge,
enough.
I do believe it's the truth that he's not happy with taking just 8 shots a game.
Okay.
Because he took 11 his first year, and I think that, he's Dwight Howard. His thinking is probably I deserve, about 13 to 15 shots a game, not going from 11 to 10 to 8 in my 3 seasons and now my 3rd season in Houston. So I think that he's right when he's saying there is an accuracy to that report. I find him to be a relatively honest guy and a decent guy whose heart usually is in the right place. So let's not sit there and use it as a reason to excoriate or denigrate his character. Let's keep it to his game.
All right.
Here's the problem with Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard was also preoccupied with his brand just as much as he was with his game. So knowing how important his brand is to him, meaning the brand that is Dwight Howard, the Superman cape, the endorsement deals, the cachet that he had coming from Orlando before he was ultimately traded to Los Angeles when he refused really to be a part of the Orlando Magic organization any longer. That Dwight Howard appears to be no more. Now, why that is, you can look at James Harden, not just shooting the ball, but dribbling, going one-on-one, and doing a lot of the things that he does that doesn't necessarily facilitate a big man getting the ball enough. That's number one. Number two, Dwight Howard doesn't appear to be the same player that he used to be. He seems a bit heavier to me. He seems a bit slower to me. He doesn't seem as athletic and as agile to me as he once was, and that may very well be due in large part to his injuries. But these are the things that I was pointing to when folks for the Houston Rockets were up in a tizzy because I blamed Dwight Howard for Kevin McHale's firing. I wasn't trying to imply that he got him fired on purpose. I certainly wasn't trying to imply that he didn't care or anything like that. What I'm saying is Kevin McHale was one of the preeminent big men we've ever seen. For the youngsters out there who don't know, before Tim Duncan came along, one could argue that Kevin McHale may have been the best low-post offensive power forward in the history of basketball. That's how big time he was. So when Dwight Howard decided to go to Houston, we were supposed to look at Dwight Howard and say, Kevin McHale's teaching you. Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon is in that stable, helping you out. The combination of those two dudes was part of the reason Dwight elected to leave L.A. and go to Houston, and was supposed to be a big reason why his game was supposed to be elevated. The fact that it wasn't ultimately led to the demise of Kevin McHale. Because if you can't get Dwight Howard to be at his best, what purpose do you serve? I believe that's played a role in Daryl Morey deciding to go in a different direction. What it comes down to, however, Skip, is ultimately where you went. Dwight Howard is not better than DeMarcus Cousins. And due to his health, I'm not trading Hassan Whiteside to get him either. Hassan Whiteside is raw offensively. His defense, his rebounding, his shot blocking ability, I'm not letting go of Hassan Whiteside for any big man in the NBA other than DeMarcus Cousins, who I believe is unquestionably the best big man in all of basketball. DeMarcus Cousins is on another level. He is where we thought Dwight Howard would ultimately go, but he has not. And I will go as far as to say this, and I hope Dwight Howard is listening, because I hope his pride kicks in and he responds. DeMarcus Cousins is on another level. Dwight Howard ain't even in the same stratosphere as DeMarcus Cousins right now. DeMarcus Cousins is big time. He can walk around averaging 25 and 12. All George Karl has to do is call his number more. He's got an inside game, he's got an outside game, and more importantly, he's got the attitude to go with it. DeMarcus Cousins is the best big man in basketball. And I'm not thinking about losing Hassan Whiteside if I'm Miami for any big man but him.
By the way, last night against Dwight, DeMarcus made 2 threes, so he's starting to shoot threes, shooting more and more. I think he's only shooting like 31%, but still, he can make threes. He can make free throws, far more valuable than Dwight is. Now, back to Dwight. So do you agree with me that Dwight falls back into that syndrome of he always looks the part with those big, massive shoulders of his, but doesn't always play the part? Is that fair? He doesn't play up to the way he presents himself?
It's fair if we're willing to acknowledge that injuries play a role. Dwight Howard has not been healthy. You understand? And that needs to be said. It ain't like he just lost his skill and he's just an average player because of his skill sets having diminished. It's because of his health. It's just that it's important to recognize.
He said he
for
played,
Dwight Howard.
Yeah, right. He played with a knee injury last year through the playoffs.
That's right. Dan Fagan and all, listen, they do a wonderful job representing him. I like Dan Fagan a lot. Here's the reality. Everything that Dwight Howard went from L.A. to Houston for, he has come up short. Yeah, they were in the Western Conference Finals last year. That much is true. But in terms of his own individual ascension, it has fallen considerably short. Literally, Dwight Howard is coming across as just another average player.
He is. I would agree.
That's what's going on right now. And so he's got to have the pride and the intestinal fortitude to step up and remind everybody of what Superman once was. And if he can't do it, it might be because of his health more so than anything else. But in the end, you just ain't that dude anymore. I'm waiting to see the Dwight Howard that was in Orlando, that to some degree was in L.A., and that we have projected was going to be in Houston. We have not seen that Dwight Howard. That's the only reason I blamed him, is because it's not that he did anything malicious or anything. It's just that more was expected from him being paired with Kevin McHale than was actually delivered upon. And it might have been very well because of his health. But right now, he comes across as, I would say, a slightly above average player. There's nothing star-studded about Dwight Howard. Yep. He's not even in DeMarcus Cousins' class. Nope. DeMarcus Cousins is in another stratosphere. It's almost like it's not there yet, because DeMarcus Cousins is no to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but it's almost like, you know how Artis Gilmore was a pretty good, you remember him, Skip, the age-old center. Artis Gilmore was a pretty good big man.
He was.
But he wasn't on the level of a Wilt Chamberlain or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's the discrepancy between DeMarcus Cousins and Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard is not on DeMarcus Cousins' level at all. Okay. And he needs to change that.
And even at his best, even in the beginning in Houston, with Kevin McHale, with Akeem Olajuwon sitting courtside and offering whatever help he could give to Dwight to develop a low post game, a go-to fourth quarter low post game, I still never saw it, Stephen A. I'm sorry. I never saw that where I said, wow, that's a force.
Come on. But let me tell you why I think that that's not something you should focus on. We never saw in Bill Russell's offensive repertoire what we saw from Wilt Chamberlain. But you still couldn't deny the appreciation that you needed to have for Bill Russell, his rebounding, his defensive abilities, his commitment to winning. What I'm saying to you is that Dwight Howard doesn't have to be DeMarcus Cousins to be near his value. If he could run the floor like a gazelle the way he used to, if he could rebound and block shots the way that he used to, if he can impact the game the way that he spent his career doing in Orlando, then we would say, well, DeMarcus Cousins has got better skills, but Dwight Howard is still in the vicinity because of his impact. The problem is that we look at DeMarcus Cousins and we see incredible skill. What we're looking for from Dwight Howard isn't the skill, but we're looking for the impact. And we're getting neither.
Yeah.
We're not getting the skill. We're not getting the impact. And regardless of what anybody wants to say about James Harden, you ask the city of Houston, who would they rather have? And it would be 1,000% in favor of James Harden, because even on slow days, the brother brings it, at least in moments, if not consistently throughout a 48-minute contest. You don't get that from Dwight Howard.
No.
And that is the problem right now.
By the way, I got to defend Bill Russell on one point. You realize he always owned Wilt Chamberlain when it counted. When it counted, Bill Russell's savvy, his clutch shot making, his just desire to win exceeded and eclipsed. See, to me, Wilt Chamberlain had more of Dwight's personality and nature. I never knew if Wilt really cared that much about winning. He was more about stats, but that's just me.
Well, that's fair, but I don't think Dwight Howard is about stats. I honestly believe that the problem with Dwight Howard is that his primary focus is peace of mind. Dwight Howard wants to come to work. He wants to go home. He doesn't want to make any noise. Any noise that he does make, he wants it to be in a very affable way where he's getting along with people. Everything's fine. The sun will shine tomorrow. I'm in Texas. I don't have to pay state income tax on my money. Everything in life is beautiful. He doesn't like controversy. He doesn't like adversity
or expectations.
And the fact of the matter is that he doesn't like the requirement of being a rough rider.
I agree.
He's not a punk.
Totally agree.
He's not soft. But he doesn't like the requirement of being a rough rider.
I agree.
And in his position, you got to be a rough rider.
Last quick point on Hassan Whiteside. By all I read from our experts on ESPN.com and for what my eyes tell me in watching the Miami Heat, it looks like they are cooling on his defensive abilities. He'll still block shots, change shots, but his commitment to playing, whatever minutes he plays, 35, 38 minutes of defense, I don't think they're sold on that. So they're looking to upgrade.
Well, in fairness to Miami Heat, I have not spoken to them about that, because usually when I reach out to them and I speak to them about things, they'll give me honest answers. So I want to preface my comments by saying I have not spoken to the Miami Heat about this particular issue. But here's what I can surmise throughout my years of obviously knowing the Miami Heat organization very well, who I consider nothing short of first class, from Mickey Harrison and Nicky to Pat Riley on down to Andy and everybody else. It's a phenomenal organization. Here's the deal. I think that in Miami, because Pat Riley is the standard bearer and he makes sure that standard is there, and a great young coach like Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley might as well have given birth to this man the way they think alike. This dude is a true protege of Pat Riley. I think playing for guys like that, you understand the importance of pacing yourself. Hassan Whiteside having the year that he had last year, understanding that he might need to pace himself, engage, and make sure he doesn't expend so much energy to the point where he wears himself out as the season wanes. I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that may play a role in what you're not seeing from him over the course of 35 minutes. Because Pat Riley and those boys, you work when you play for the Miami Heat organization. You don't get too many days off. They're committed to excellence. And sometimes, what they require from you on a daily basis may be a bit different than what other teams require, because they have a standard they're fixated on living up to. So if you're Hassan Whiteside, as you develop and grow, you might have been hearing your name a little bit too much, might be feeling the press just a little bit. Possibly, but I think it's more so about him pacing himself. I think this kid's got a lot of promise. I like him a lot. I spoke to Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, several other players about him. They rave about him. They seem to be very fond of him. I haven't spoken to them in several weeks about him. Haven't spoken to Hassan in several weeks. But last time I spoke was when I saw him when I interviewed Dwayne Wade. But I believe in this kid, and I think he's got a lot of promise. I don't move him unless I'm getting DeMarcus Cousins. I'm not letting go of Hassan Whiteside for Dwight Howard. Not this Dwight Howard. I'm not doing it.
We got it.
All right. Let's leave it there. The guys have strong takes on Dwight and thoughts, as you just heard, and they agree. They actually agree on something. They both would rather have DeMarcus Cousins over Dwight Howard at this point. But we want to hear from you. Which NBA big man would you rather have on your squad, Howard or DeMarcus Cousins? Vote in our Twitter poll at First Take. We'll reveal those
100%.
results at the end of the show. I don't think it will be, Stephen A., but we shall see. We'll reveal that later and revisit it.
Yeah. We should have an idiot poll.
Stop it.
Who's the idiot that picked Dwight Howard over DeMarcus Cousins? That's what we should have, an idiot poll, because it should be 100%. Anybody who knows basketball, that's been watching basketball for the last year, unless you want to sit there and say, I don't trust DeMarcus Cousins temperamentally, which I think is bogus, unless that's the reason, there is no excuse for anybody who knows anything about basketball to pick Dwight Howard over DeMarcus Cousins at this juncture. DeMarcus Cousins is the best big man in basketball. There's nothing to talk about. Anybody who says otherwise, they should get their basketball card snatched, and they should be banned from having an opinion about basketball.
Can't wait for these results.
Did you get a hold of my Diet Mountain Dew this morning? What is into you? I've never heard you like this.
Hype, he's focused, big day, ready to go.
Look, hey, Skip. Hey, Skip. You know what? Hey, listen. It's basketball, baby. I mean, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to say?
I want you to say a little less. That's all.
Well,
so Molly can talk.
Just bring up the Cowboys. I promise you I'll have nothing to say. I'll have nothing to say.
All right, let's move on to New England here now. Their season has absolutely been plagued by injuries. The latest Patriot to now suffer a season-ending injury is LeGarrette Blount. He's out with a hip injury, that according to our Adam Schefter, that he suffered Sunday against Houston. The Patriots have 12 offensive players on IR and 16 total, and have had 7 different running backs this season, most in the league. Stephen A., how far can Brady take this team with all these injuries piling up?
As long as Julian Edelman comes back and Rob Gronkowski stays healthy, I am not concerned about the Patriots before the AFC Championship game. Now, obviously, at the AFC Championship game, if Pittsburgh is good enough to get to that point, if Peyton Manning comes back and Denver rides that #1 defense and they're healthy enough to get to that point, things can get very interesting. But I don't see anything impeding New England's ability to get to the AFC Championship game as long as Rob Gronkowski and Julian Edelman are in the lineup and stay in the lineup. Of course, losing LeGarrette Blount is a devastating blow, particularly after Deion Lewis went down as well. We understand that. But with Tom Brady behind center, able to employ play-action passing, with Gronkowski and Edelman out there, I think it's easier than most systems to really generate a running game in New England. It's just that Gronkowski and Edelman have to be out there where you have some element of surprise and teams can't stack the line of scrimmage. I think as long as that's the case and Gronk and Edelman are out there with Tom Brady, I don't think you have anything to worry about. But if Gronk and Edelman, or at least one of them, are out, plus you don't have Blount and Deion Lewis, you could experience some trouble.
Okay, so question. If, in fact, the New England Patriots secure home field advantage throughout the playoffs, they get 2 home games to get to the Super Bowl, would you bet against the New England Patriots getting to the Super Bowl? Would you bet against them, not in the AFC Championship game in Foxborough, right?
No, I would not.
Okay.
No, I would not.
Okay, this brings me back to my case for Tom Brady as this year's MVP. Maybe you could make the case he's always the MVP, and the wealth should be shared. Cam has had a breakout season. We all get that. A sensational season. We can talk about Carson Palmer all you want. I'm still going to talk about what this man continues to do behind a makeshift, decimated patchwork of an offensive line. They've even lost Josh Klein, their starting guard now. I don't know how they do it. Tom Brady's been sacked 32 times, and any other quarterback behind that line would have been sacked at least 64 times by now. Tom Brady lost Shane Vereen, who was a key to winning last year's Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks. Then, as you well know, he lost Dion Lewis, who looked like the bolt from heaven to replace Shane Vereen. Gone. Now LeGarrette Blount, who on any given Sunday can rise up and have 150 yards rushing. He can also have a disappearing act game, too. But every once in a while, when you need him, when the game plan dictates for some sledgehammer 250-pound rushing numbers, he'll give them to you. And he's gone. And now Edelman is iffy at best. He's almost certainly not going to play for the rest of the regular season. And with that Jones fracture that Dez had, Kevin Durant had, he's just iffy for the playoffs. I don't know. And I told you the other night, watching Rob Gronkowski at Houston, he's wearing that big, bulky brace, and he's one low hit away from being gone again because he's probably rushing back a little bit too quickly off his badly sprained knee. So I don't know how Brady keeps doing this. They're going to mix in Brandon Bolden. They're talking to Steven Jackson, you remember, from the Falcons last year. And you know, after a while, you start saying, well, it just doesn't matter. You can plug anybody into any of these slots, and Brady makes it go. Well, given the fact they're now 11-2, and he leads the National Football League with 33 touchdown passes to only 6 interceptions, I just don't know how he can't be the MVP, but that's just me. And this continues to secure it. If he wins out this year without LeGarrette Blount and without all the other players, then how can he not be the MVP? I don't get it. And that's taking nothing away from what Cam's doing.
Well, listen, and I understand, I can respect the fact that you're not taking away anything from what Cam is doing. But what I would tell you is that a vast majority of this season, Brady has had his primary weapons available to him. Rob Gronkowski missed a few games, but for the most part, he's had them. Julian Edelman missed a few games, and he has missed a few games, but for the most part, you had him. The same thing could be said with Danny Amendola. The same thing could be said with Brandon LaFell. Of course, Dion Lewis going down hurts. Now LeGarrette Blount going down has been, that hurts. But LeGarrette Blount has been there for most of this season. And not only that, there was always the expectation because of the system, because of Brady, because of Bill Belichick, because of the personnel that they had. There was always the expectation that the New England Patriots would be right where they are and playing against a suspect division in the AFC East, obviously factored into the equation as well. We're talking about a Carolina Panthers team, however, that went 7-8-1 in winning their division last year. We're talking about a team that came into this season with their primary receiver, Kelvin Benjamin, going down before a game is played. We're talking about a Ted Ginn Jr. being your primary receiver when he's had to be a journeyman wide receiver because even though he's electrifying with his speed and his route running, he tends to drop too many passes, right? That was your primary receiver along with Greg Olsen and Dixon as your two tight end formations, all right? So when you look at it from that perspective and the fact that D'Angelo Williams is going, so once upon a time you were running a two-back system in Carolina. Now it's just one with Jonathan Stewart. Once upon a time you had Kelvin Benjamin as your number one wideout. Now he was gone because he went out before the season even began. And you're fresh off a 7-8-1 season. And the expectation was, the Carolina Panthers will be lucky to win 7 games. But here they are standing at 13-0 with late game finishes by Cam against New Orleans, against the Seattle Seahawks, with him performing big time in the fourth quarter, being Russell Wilson type with like 14 or 15 touchdowns, just 1 interceptions, leading the league in QBRs in the fourth quarter. All of these things that you've seen from this man throughout the season, considering the limited weapons that he's had available at his disposal, not to mention the fact that they still stand here today unblemished at 13-0 with nearly a flaw along the way. I don't think you can deny that fact. You can respect Brady, can respect the fact that he's elite, look at his numbers and respect what they are. But you know what? He throws the football a little bit more consistently than Cam Newton, number one. Number two, we didn't expect anything from Carolina. And look at what Cam Newton has them doing. So you can make the argument for Brady. You're right. But I can also make the argument for Cam, which I believe I just did.
Who has the better defense to lean on, Brady or Cam?
Well, we could sit there and say Cam because wait, not. Listen, I got mad respect for Carolina's defense. I mean, they're big time, but let's not poo-poo New England and what they bring to the table. They got a bunch of playmakers on that side of the ball, and they know what they're doing. And so when you look at it from that perspective, a lot of times you got to remember they've got a lead. Tom Brady's giving them some kind of cushion. They could go out there. They could take chances. When things need to get done by New England's defense, they continuously show us they're more than capable of getting the job done.
Okay, which quarterback plays in the little tougher division? Brady. Because there is the Jets, and Buffalo's still pretty good. And look at the rest of Cam's division. Nah.
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
true, but we didn't expect Atlanta to fall off the map the way that they did. You know, yeah, I understand that, but they started out winning 5 straight games.
38-0 in Carolina.
You know, exactly. Now, you know.
So again,
I get where you're coming, but to me, there's legitimate arguments on both sides. I'm rolling with Cam.
Again, LeGarrette Blount done for the season. He rushed for a team-leading 703 yards, 6 TDs this season. So they now have Brandon Bolden, James White, and they just signed Montee Ball from Denver to the practice squad.
I knew it would come. It's just we can't always do it the way we like. But Greg's ready. The staff is ready. All the way through. It is so emotional right now. I'm trying to hold this together. I know the energy level. Barry knew the energy level in football. The things, the demands of the time, the speaking, the traveling, the trying to do things to help other people. I enjoy doing it. And the thing was, I felt it was time. But I couldn't make the decision at that time. And I don't know how many coaches ever have the opportunity to have an AD, an administration that understands and respects that. Extremely hard telling the players, as you can imagine.
Obviously, that was Bo Ryan, the winningest coach in program history. He said in June that he'd retire after the season. Then 2 months later, he wavered on that, stating he could coach 4 or 5 more years. Then yesterday, Ryan announcing he is retiring effective immediately. Associate head coach Greg Gard will serve as the interim coach. Wisconsin is a season removed from a national title game berth, and they started the season 7-5. Skip, how surprised were you by this?
Molly, Stephen A., I must admit, when I first saw the story, because I don't closely follow Wisconsin basketball, I was shocked. And my first thought was, gee, could he have just finally said, I'm not suited for this? Because I did notice that last week they lost 2 backyard in-state games to Milwaukee and Marquette. And I thought, gee, did he just sort of pull a Steve Spurrier and say, I'm just no good anymore? I've run out of gas. I don't have the emotional commitment I used to have. I don't think that happened. And by the way, I have nothing but the highest regard for this man on and off the basketball court and the great job he's done for 15 years for Wisconsin. It sounds like, from all I read, this is from a distance, that his hand-picked, carefully groomed successor, Glenn Gard, was going through a big issue with his father, who was battling cancer last spring and through the summer, recently passed away. And off the quote we just heard from Bo Ryan, that he felt it was time, but he couldn't make the decision at that time. That time was probably after they came so close last year in the national finals, barely lost to an obviously a better team, I think, a more talented team. And he lost Kaminsky and he lost Decker to the NBA, obviously. And it was time, maybe not to rebuild, but to reload at Wisconsin. And maybe he felt it was time then to step down after last year's finals, but that Glenn Gard was not emotionally ready to make the full-time commitment to seize the reins. So that's what I think from a distance. That's my 2 cents from the distance that happened, that now it's time. I hated for him to step down after some sort of meaningless game, home win over Texas A&M Corpus Christi. You'd like to see a little more fanfare, a little more hoopla. That's how you're going out, Coach? But he thought it was time. I guess Glenn Gard now thinks he's ready to go to make the commitment. They have lost 5 games already. They were ranked 17th in an AP preseason poll, but only 5th in the Big Ten preseason polls. So it's going to be a struggle this year. I don't even know if they'll make the tournament or not, but it sounds like he was ready to step down after last season. Your thoughts?
Well, my thought is that he's a treasure to the profession. when you're 68 years of age, Skip, and you have the success that he has had, you deserve the right to go out on your own terms, no matter what those terms are. 15 years, 12, 21 seasons. I looked at his record. Not one single year in those 15 years has he ever won less than 19 games. Last 2 seasons, he won 30. The season before, he won 36 games last year, a school record. Got them to the national championship game, a game they could have won if 1 or 2 plays had gone their way. This year, you come in, your third leading scorer is now your primary leading scorer because Frank Kaminsky gets drafted by the Charlotte Hornets. Sam Decker goes to the Houston Rockets. And so you got to rely on Nigel Hayes. You're looking at the team. You understand that there's a level of energy and focus and tenacity and other things that have to come into the equation in order for you to maximize the potential that exists on this particular squad. And at the age of 68, after coaching so many years and being one of the preeminent figures in all of college basketball over the last 15 years, he reached a point where he said, hey, my time is up. Now, I do agree with you, considering what his assistant coach Carter was going through with his dad in the offseason and over the summer. It does strike me, Bo Ryan strikes me as the kind of guy that would have gladly walked away before this season began if all of that wasn't going on. There's no way on earth that I believe that this man did not contemplate walking away, and then all of a sudden, after 12 games and a 7-5 start, he just said, hey, I'm leaving. I've had enough. I don't believe that for 1 second. I believe he had every intention of leaving before the season began, once last season had ended. But because of the troubles the now head coach, then an assistant, was going through, he said that wasn't the time. And I think because of that, he didn't want to leave the program in shambles, and that's why he didn't do what he did. But now that the time is right, I think he's doing what he ultimately wanted to do once they had lost the national championship game last year. But he still walks away with his head held high, and anybody who knows anything about the game of college basketball should have nothing but profound respect for this man and what he has brought to the game. And I think you'll see people expressing those very sentiments as the season progresses, especially over the next few days when we get an opportunity to talk about Bo Ryan. He was a good one. There's no question about that.
And it appears the program's in good hands, a good succession plan there as well. Up next, Big Ben says Vontzae Burfict intentionally went after his knees with this hit on Sunday. Did the guys think it was a low blow? Don't miss their reaction to that next.
Did I fall asleep and dream? You did it. You chose him. He was horrible. How about them Cowboys?
Oh, whatever.
I don't know what he's doing. He tap danced like the late Gregory Hines.
The Battle Frog Fiesta Bowl. Notre Dame and Ohio State were in the playoff conversation all season long. While they had 3 losses between them, they were only by a combined 7 points. 2 of the best in the nation collide in Arizona. Number 7, Ohio State. Number 8, Notre Dame. The Battle Frog Fiesta Bowl. Coverage begins New Year's Day at 1 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
And I don't buy that he was pushed. You know, I think that he definitely was diving in low and going for my legs. So it's tough. I'm just glad I didn't get hurt. There's got to be a level of professionalism when you play guys. You never want to intentionally hurt someone. Yeah, do you want to play the game as physical as you can and try and win the game? Yes, but never to intentionally harm somebody or put someone out of a game or out of end their season and maybe end their career. That's just not the way the game should be played.
That was the voice of Big Ben discussing the low hit he took Sunday from Bengals linebacker Vontzae Burfict, where Burfict dove for Ben's ankles after the ball was released. Roethlisberger not buying the linebacker story. Our Ed Warder is reporting that the NFL is currently reviewing that hit. Skip, you saw it. Was it a dirty hit?
Stephen A., if that had been almost any other player except Vontzae Burfict, I would say it wasn't a dirty hit. Maybe borderline, but I don't think I would have raised my eyebrows or thought twice about it. But because it is this player, I did think 3 or 4 times about it, And after I heard Ben yesterday, I said that's a dirty hit, initiated by a dirty player. Quick bit of background for those who don't know Vontzae Burfict's background. Straight out of Compton, Centennial High School, extremely talented player, signed first with USC, highly sought after, wound up at Arizona State, had a terrific college career that was marred by a number of the usual unsportsmanlike conduct penalties or personal fouls on the field. As he went toward the combine, after he left Arizona State, he was ranked just behind Kuechly and Dante Hightower among linebackers. Then he tested positive for marijuana at that combine. And he not only fell in the draft because of his on and off field issues, he fell completely out of the draft. He has been a steal for Cincinnati because he is a really good football player when he's right. Sometimes he's not right. He plays the enforcer role for Marvin Lewis's team. He's injured players. He has a long history of personal fouls. We don't have time to go through all of them, but most people know about his history. So given that history, at some point, when does the league step in and say enough is enough? Because after a while, frankly, I don't want to see this kind of player in my NFL. I love the violence that is the National Football League. I like legal violence. I like high speed, high stakes violence conducted at its highest, purest level, but I don't love this kind of stuff. And especially when the quarterback is involved, I know there's nothing but bad blood between these two teams, between Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. But in this case, when you go after Ben's lower extremities, as Molly said, he kind of hit into the ankles. It wasn't like a shot right into the side of the knee. But I don't love it. Ben didn't love it. Referees looked the other way, didn't even get flagged. But in the end, I ask you, when does the NFL step in and say enough of Vontzae is enough? Because I think we're getting close to that.
Well, I think we should already be there. I thought it was a dirty hit. And obviously I'm a Steelers fan, but what Vontzae Burfict may not realize, I'm a Vontzae Burfict fan. I think the brother can play. And I think that he's one of the guys that adds a mystique to Cincinnati's defense that makes them formidable. And I got a lot of respect for him. But I don't want to hear anything about being pushed. He targeted Ben Roethlisberger's lower extremities. Look at the play, and you could see him literally diving towards Ben Roethlisberger's lower legs. And one of the things that is just a pet peeve of mine, Skip, one of the things that makes me so angry about some of these defensive players, and I totally get where Ray Lewis is coming from, is that we're men, it's a man's game, and, you know, with the headshots and all of that stuff, I get that. But you look at Vontzae Burfict, you know, sitting there looking at the Steelers sidelines and all that stuff. You act like it's a straight-up fight when you're coming up against a defenseless quarterback who's got his back turned looking to pass the football, and you get to get a free shot at him. It's not like this is MMA or something that somebody gets to hit you back. It's not like you in a boxing ring where you fighting somebody straight up. He's looking to throw the football, and you're coming from his backside low and hitting him and getting up like you did something. It just amazes me how some of these guys, you know, act like, you know, they're so big time because they're willing to do something like that. That makes no sense to me. But having said that, I totally agree with Ben Roethlisberger. It was absolutely a dirty play. I think considering the league that we're living in right now, the NFL that we're watching, it's a damn shame that he hasn't been fined, if not, dare I say, suspended. Because if he had hit Ben Roethlisberger upside the head, I'm sure the league would have fined or suspended him then. But you can go at his knees, you can go at his ankles directly, and it's absolutely positively not a problem when you're doing so. And it was clear you didn't have to go that low in order to get at Ben Roethlisberger. So I definitely think it's something that the league should take a look at, especially since it's entirely possible that Cincinnati and Pittsburgh will meet one another again. It was extra chippy. They were doing a lot of stuff to each other. Remember, Le'Veon Bell got hurt on a highly questionable hit by one of the Bengals last year, which is why I believe the Steelers ended up losing their playoff game. It's one of the things that you've got to look at right now. It's clearly an excessive level of dirtiness that we're witnessing when these teams go against each other, and it's usually on the part of the Bengals because we don't see the Steelers getting fined and suspended or anything like that. We don't see us calling out those particular plays because we're not seeing that from them. Tomlin is in their face talking about the need to be professional and to be above the fray and not get into stuff on social media and beyond. I'm surprised we haven't heard Marvin Lewis speak out against that.
Yeah, by the way, just for the record, I don't think the Steelers have been exactly angels in this rivalry because
I didn't accuse them of that.
Mike Mitchell hit Tyler Eifert with a little bit of a questionable shot the other day. So
where was it? Where was the shot? Where was the shot?
Head.
Into the head?
Yeah.
Now, didn't Eifert lower? Didn't he come lower? I saw him ducking and leading into the hit.
He's like
lowering
6'6",
himself into the hit.
I don't know.
I didn't see Mike Mitchell lunge up and hit him.
It looked
I didn't
questionable
see that.
to me, Mr. Steeler, but that's okay.
Well, I'm not going to listen. I don't want the Steelers to be choir boys. I want them to go after it. That's what I want. But you don't have to be dirty to do it. That's all I'm saying.
All right,
Why don't you cave somebody's chest in? Why don't you let them have to go out the game because they can't breathe because you gave them a body shot that they still haven't recovered from? How about that? As opposed to doing something illegal or what's universally recognized according to player code as dirty. Well, we all know what that is.
Dirty is twisting ankles, and we saw that against Carolina. Remember the Greg Olsen cam plays where he's twisting ankles, if we have those. And, yeah, here we go. And this is really over-the-line kind of stuff where it's not even within the realm of possibility that it wasn't dirty. You know, like he was just he was playing out of control and accidentally. You don't accidentally twist ankles. So you know,
let's call the Cincinnati Bengals out on this respect. I thought y'all were talented. I thought y'all the big boys on the block. I thought y'all are about to win the AFC North. I thought y'all are about to contend for a Super Bowl championship. If you want to beat a man, beat the man. Beat him fair and square. You twisting ankles. You trying to take people's knees out. What, are you scared to go up against them? Because you're afraid you can't be at your best, go against somebody at their best and see what happens? What's the problem, Cincinnati? I would expect more from the Cincinnati Bengals. There's a couple of brothers I know on that squad. They're real cool. I like them. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking in general to the Cincinnati Bengals organization. Why don't you do something come the postseason? And why does it have to be with somebody getting hurt because of what you're doing? Why don't you man up, and make sure you at your best and leave them at their best and just go out there and beat them? I ain't talking to A.J. Green. We know he can play. I ain't talking to Adam Jones. I know. I ain't talking to a few other brothers that I know on the squad. I'm cool with them. I'm saying collectively, as an organization, why don't you do that? If you Marvin Lewis, why don't you come out and speak out about how these guys need to conduct themselves like professionals, just the same way Mike Tomlin did with his team? Why you got cats out there being dirty for? If you're going to win, go ahead and win. What, you can't win any other way? You keep losing playoff games after playoff games over the last 12 years, so now we've resorted to dirty tactics so we can hurt people on our way. Maybe if they can't play, it's an easier path for us. What's the problem?
Well,
right
now the problem is A.J. McCarron, but that's a whole nother issue. So
I don't know if that's a problem.
Brother McCarron, he could be a problem. You never know. Yeah. I
wouldn't rule that out. A.J. McCarron can play.
Okay, so bottom line to this discussion, even though the refs did not flag this play by Vontzae Burfict, at what point, given the escalating resume of one Mr. Burfict, does the NFL just say that's enough? Because I think we're
there. Should be right now.
Yeah, okay.
Should be right now.
All right.
It should be right now. I think at the very least he should receive a stiff fine. Envelope in his locker within the next 24 hours. I think at the very least it should cost him some money.
Burfict has been fined 5 times for incidents like this prior by the NFL.
Make it 6.
And Skip, I appreciate earlier you giving us that history and backstory on him because I think that context was really important.
Wow. You can't play it any better than that.
Well, you can't. You might as well say you can't play defense.
You might as well can't play defense. After what LeBron has been doing to everybody, well, LeBron started crying about 4 possessions ago, and he's done it twice without a handkerchief. LeBron is crying, giving it the old, I'm the king. You're making a jester out of me.
Nothing better than a Boston accent there. Last night, Celtics color commentator Tommy Heinsohn wasn't a fan, clearly, of LeBron James complaining about the calls he was getting during the Cavs' 89-77 win over the Seas. LeBron finishing with 24 points, 7 rebounds, went to the free throw line 4 times and was called for 3 personal fouls. Stephen A., does Heinsohn have a point up there in Beantown?
I'm sorry, they were in my ear, Molly. I couldn't hear your question.
That's okay. I was saying, does Heinsohn have a point in terms of LeBron there?
Well, LeBron was complaining. There's no question about that. But, it's hard for me to answer whether he had a point or not, because what I heard from Tommy Heinsohn is what I always hear from Tommy Heinsohn. Skip, I got a little secret to tell you. I don't know if you know this about me. If I don't watch the Celtics too often unless I have to, all right, because I got other things to do, other teams to cover, et cetera, I'll go to, a game occasionally or watch a big game of theirs on television. But I got to tell you, Tommy Heinsohn has always been must-watch television for me. If I know he's calling a game, I don't care if I get to turn it to CSN for 5 minutes. If I get to listen to Tommy Heinsohn to broadcast as color commentator, the color commentator on their broadcast, I'm going to turn it to that channel. The second I see CSN and Boston Celtics, I'm going to try to find it for 5 minutes to watch him, because I find him to be the most hilarious color commentator in the nation. He is straight comedy. No objectivity whatsoever. I mean, Skip, first of all, let's be honest, and I'm not mocking him in any way. This dude is a Hall of Famer as a player with the Boston Celtics. He's a Hall of Famer, coached the Boston Celtics from like 68 to like 70, 69 to like 78. He's a Hall of Famer as a coach.
Yep.
Okay, he won a championship as a player, as a coach. He's been in there as a color commentator. The guy is the only guy in Celtic lore associated with all 17 championships on their resume. This guy is phenomenal. There's no question about that. But I would tell you, he has no objectivity. Skip, you foul a Boston Celtic. Tommy, it's not beyond the pale for to hit Tommy Heinsohn talk about how you should be arrested for assault. I mean, he takes it there, man. The stuff that he says in favor of the Boston Celtics. I mean, if the Boston Celtics were on trial for anything, he never has to worry about being called for jury duty, because he'll never say anything against them. Everything they do is right. They're always the victim when it comes to Tommy Heinsohn. I mean, and he will go to another, and I'm not knocking him for it. He is a Celtic through and through. If you are a Boston Celtic fan, there is no one on the planet you should love more than Tommy Heinsohn, because he is going to support this organization to the end. It doesn't matter what it was. So when I heard him say that about LeBron, I wasn't surprised at all. It's the same old Tommy Heinsohn that I've been listening to. He just giving they can do no wrong in this man's eyes. Nothing. They're always the victim. And anybody that's not wearing Celtic green and white is the villain. And it has forever been that way with him. And it will never, ever change. That's just who he is.
Okay.
It's who he is, man.
I do appreciate the fact that you brought up what a great player he was and a good coach that he was. And by the way, for those who don't go nearly this far back, when Tommy came out at Holy Cross, his rookie year, he was voted Rookie of the Year over his teammate, Bill Russell. That's how good he was coming out of Holy Cross.
That's right.
So he was a really good player, just for credibility's sake.
Oh, that's important.
Now, he has become to Celtic fans what Harry Carey used to be to Cubs fans, and before that to Cardinal fans. And I loved Harry, but in the end he became Harry Caricature, right? Because he was he was so over the top that he became sort of laughable. And some nights, Tommy Heinsohn, and I watch him a lot, can be laughable with his lack of objectivity. I give you that. But I also watch a whole lot of direct TV basketball games in various cities in which I get to hear the local color analysts, and nobody would have the guts to do what he did last night, which was to call out the king. And I must tell you, as I was watching, I stood up and gave Tommy a standing ovation, because LeBron deserved to be called out, Again, they were pulling away. They played one of their, it might be the best game Cleveland's played all year. There was obviously some bad blood from last year's playoff series, the injuries going both ways. But I thought that last night, once Cleveland took charge, LeBron did start crying. And he can be, to quote Tommy, a crybaby. And he was, as Tommy said, crying without tears. And he was, in the end, the king saying, "You're turning me into a jester." And I loved it all because last night it wasn't over the top. It was true. So thank you, Tommy, for having the guts or the lack of objectivity, however you want to portray it, as calling out LeBron when he deserved to be in ways that no other local visiting commentator or the opposing team commentator would ever call out LeBron. He did it, and it was right.
First of all, LeBron James was complaining about a call.
He was complaining about every call.
Players do that all the time. That's number one. Number two, Magic. I heard Tommy say that about Magic Johnson. And let's not act like nobody on the Celtics ever complained. I mean, who looked like they were crying more than Danny Ainge when he was playing?
Now you're going way back, but not this current team.
Wait a minute. I'm making the point that we don't hear Tommy Heinsohn bringing that up. I never heard Tommy Heinsohn sit there and say, "Stop crying." When somebody is crying on the Boston side, when Paul Pierce is complaining, when Rondo or Ray Allen or somebody complained, or when Doc Rivers complained, Tommy Heinsohn, "You go get him." Absolutely right. How could they do that? I mean, this is who he is. I mean, he has, you might stand up and applaud because that's what you want to do with all things LeBron, especially if it's getting at him. But the point is, Tommy Heinsohn, it's not like he's the paragon of objectivity. Don't sit there and say, occasionally, he can go over the top. Occasionally, he's not objective. Please. Subjectivity is his middle name. I mean, what are you talking about? It defines this man when it comes to the Boston Celtics. And I don't mind. I don't want it to be misconstrued as me getting on Tommy Heinsohn. He's fantastic. Who the hell am I to get on him? I love listening to him. I always go to shake his hand. He's a gentleman. I love talking to him about the Boston Celtics on a rare occasion that I've had the honor and privilege to do so. I have profound respect for this man. And he is all things Boston Celtics to me. Just don't tell me he's objective. He's not objective at any moment about these Boston Celtics. At all.
Okay,
this
but points of order.
Loves his Celtics.
Danny Ainge wasn't the king. Even Paul Pierce, as great as he was never the king. Rondo certainly was never the king, but the king is the king, and the king got called out last night by the one guy who has the guts to call him out. Thank you.
I'm saying that LeBron James did. Kobe's complained, Magic's complained. It doesn't matter. If you're not a Celtic and you're complaining about the Celtics, to Tommy Heinsohn, you are crying. That's all I'm trying to say.
All right.
You're crying.
LeBron didn't get any Tommy points.
No, he didn't. But in the end, he did give some credit to a Kevin Love who got his quote-unquote revenge last night on Kelly Olynyk on the floor and on the scoreboard. The move he put on Olynyk late in that game, a little up and under, it was sweet.
It was nice.
Yeah, it was nice.
It was nice.
And listen, Kevin Love had a big-time game last night, and that's usually the best way to wreak a little revenge on the guy who pulled your arm out of socket. Right?
Yeah, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
Heinsohn was elected to the Hall of Fame as a player in '86, and then this year went in as a coach.
I got him this book for Christmas. Books all the time. I probably could have 100 catches right now. So I got him this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you already give it to him?
No, but I have to give it to him right now before news break. Yeah. Don't tell him. So, yeah, I probably could have 100 catches. Dak probably could have 75 catches if he didn't, hurt his thumb.
Story time with Brandon Marshall. He's already in the Christmas spirit they're giving to his quarterback. Keyshawn Johnson's book, Give Me the Damn Ball. Brandon Marshall is 5th in the league in receiving yards and 4th in the league in touchdown receptions. Skip, what do you make of the gift?
Stephen A. Smith, remember when we had Brandon Marshall on? I think it was at the Super Bowl 2 Super Bowls ago, and you ridiculed him. Remember this? You ridiculed him for shaking his pom-poms for Jay Cutler of the Chicago Bears when they were teammates. Remember that?
Yep.
Now he's doing it for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Brandon is a piece of work. He is a shrewd operator. He's not just the quarterback whisperer. He's the quarterback charmer, the quarterback manipulator. But in this case, it wasn't even subtle pom-pom waving. He actually reached back for a blast from the past. Keyshawn's 1997 book, Just Give Me the Damn Ball. 1997, ordered several copies of it. He's going to give it to all the receivers, but mostly he wants to give it to his new quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then he openly admits to the media session there, I could have 100 catches now. And right now, Antonio Brown's the only one he's got exactly 100 catches. Julio has 109. But Brandon is just blatantly campaigning, just throw me more damn balls. And as you recall, Jay Cutler threw him footballs to a fault, probably in his Denver days, when at one point Brandon had the third most catches in the league, and in his Chicago days, when back in 2012, Brandon had the second most catches in the National Football League, to the detriment of the Bears. Many of the Bears observers that year said the downfall of the Bears is that Jay Cutler had become way too dependent upon, where's Brandon? Where's Brandon? He tried to throw every damn ball to Brandon that year. So here we go again, and it's laughable to me how blatant he is. He's actually going to give him a Christmas present that's with the title of Just Give Me the Damn Ball. Wow, way to go, Brandon. But if it works, God bless. Merry Christmas.
Exactly. I can't knock the hustle. The fact is that if Brandon Marshall, he's got about 3 games to go, okay, and he's already got 89 receptions. He's already a 1,100-yard receiver. And that would mark 3 times in the last 4 years that Brandon Marshall has had 100 receptions or more. I can't blame him for that. And by the way, this is his second best season in terms of yards per game, because he's averaging about 91.3 yards per game. That same year in 2012, when he had 118 receptions for 1,508 yards, he averaged 94.3 a game. But you said that was to the detriment of the Chicago Bears. That remains to be seen. I think Jay Cutler's presence is to the detriment of the Chicago Bears, not Brandon Marshall catching passes for him. But that's an argument for another day. In the end, what it comes down to is that if the Jets are going to be successful, in all likelihood, they will need to get Brandon Marshall the damn ball. So why hide it? Or you understand there's a level of urgency that's attached to the rest of this season. Jets got to win these 3 games, okay? They got a game coming up this week. They got to go up against New England thereafter. They close out the season in Buffalo. They got to show up and play. So considering the challenges that lie before them, you got to give yourself the best chance to win. And Brandon Marshall believes that the best chance to win would be him. This is why McCagnon, the GM, went out and got Brandon Marshall as your number 1, because he needed a legitimate number 1, because Eric Decker is a number 2. Brandon Marshall is not telling Ryan Fitzpatrick, don't give Eric Decker the ball. Don't give anybody else the ball. He said, get me the damn ball, meaning make sure primarily I'm your target. And I believe that's the best chance that the Jets have of winning, so it doesn't bother me at all.
Do I detect some hypocrisy here? Because you're all over him about Jay Cutler, but you're okay with him with Ryan Fitzpatrick? Does that suggest?
Why.
Are you saying that Ryan Fitzpatrick is better than Jay Cutler? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I think most people are better than Jay Cutler.
Well, is Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Jay Cutler, I think, well, yeah. I think so. This year, I think he is.
That wasn't very convincing.
Absolutely.
Are you backed into a corner? I want you to declare Ryan Fitzpatrick is better than Jay Cutler.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is better than Jay Cutler this year.
This year?
I think so.
I don't even think he is this year, and he's never been before this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Is he a franchise quarterback?
Well, listen.
Look at his stars. Look at his record.
Mr. Vanderbilt, zip it. You have no objectivity with this. Cuddy. Be quiet. I ain't trying to hear you. My point is that with Brandon Marshall, I got on him about the pom-poms, because no matter how awful, lethargic, apathetic and indifferent Jay Cutler looked, Brandon Marshall would come to his defense until he became a New York Jet. Then he confirmed everything I've been saying about Jay Cutler. He turned on him
for
years.
He turned on Jay Cutler. Once he was a Jet,
he told facts.
On our very airwaves, on our show, at Jets camp, he turned on his man, Jay Cutler, quote unquote.
He acknowledged facts that were no longer deniable even to him. There's a difference. Whereas with Ryan Fitzpatrick, there's no animus towards Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's been ineffective because he just wasn't deemed as being talented enough. He wasn't somebody that was talented, did have the world in front of him, and just never gave a damn about anything but cutting a check. That's not Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he stepped up this year and got the job done for the most part. I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick has done a pretty damn good job for the most part this season, and he deserves credit for it.
Okay, so you now have the Jets that you picked before the season to be a wild card team. You have them making the playoffs. We spoke about it yesterday at the end of the show over Kansas City.
It's an emotional pick.
Right? It's an emotional pick. But you have Ryan Fitzpatrick leading them to 3 more wins starting Saturday night. You just glossed over this at Jerry World against, I forget what that team is.
That's an afterthought.
Yeah,
that's easy. Who are they playing?
A done deal.
Who's the team? I don't even know it. I don't even know who they are. That's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time.
There's no relevancy there.
They folded.
I was talking about the last 2 games.
Christmas. Yep.
No,
they aren't even going to show
Dallas
up
went
on
home for
Saturday
Thanksgiving.
Night.
They just forgot to tell you.
Oh, they forgot to tell me. Yep. We'll see what happens on Saturday night. When they beat the Jets, it's booked, it's guaranteed, it's over.
Skip's going to be standing up the whole time. But the funny part about that story...
I'm not talking about him. I'm not doing it.
...is that the title really has nothing to do with the book. I find it remarkable. He wrote that book 18 years ago, and it still has legs. It's
it
like
does.
Seinfeld. Get those
But it doesn't have
checks.
anything to do with the book?
No.
I must
it's more
admit.
rags to riches story.
I don't know if anybody noticed, but if you watch Keyshawn on Countdown, that's basically what he says. Give him the damn mic.
Oh, give him the damn mic. Oh, wow. Oh, so that's how
the two of you, that must be tough. That's a tough dynamic. Skip, you never get a word in.
That's the Keyshawn I know.
Yeah.
He ain't taking a back seat to anybody. Give it to him.
Keep getting those residual checks. No, it really is a good read.
The biggest New Year's Eve party of all time. And you're invited. The Orange Bowl, Clemson, Oklahoma. At the 5, touchdown, Alabama. The Cotton Bowl, Alabama, Michigan State. The College Football Playoff. Coverage begins New Year's Eve at 3 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
There's 2 things I learned that I could do. I could hit a baseball, and I think I can learn or teach a lot of people not to make the same mistakes that I made. That they can learn from my situation. And I think there's a lot of people that may be headed in the wrong path, can just look at what happened to me and learn from that situation. There was a time in my life when I was out of control, gambling. I guess there's probably a lot of people in this town could be out of control gambling. But I worked hard at it. I got it under wraps for the last several years, and I'm in control of my life right now. All I look forward to being someday is friends of baseball. I want baseball and Pete Rose to be friends. That's all I want so I can say I'm not an outsider looking in. I got grandkids. They want their grandpa to be associated with baseball. That's all.
That was Pete Rose speaking after his appeal for reinstatement to baseball was denied. And all he wants to be is friends with baseball, Skip. You watched this whole press conference. Did it change your mind?
Not only did it not change my mind, it actually helped make it up even more strongly than ever. Stephen A. Smith, the whole show yesterday, and I watched it live from start to finish, was nothing short of pathetic. Lord have mercy on us all. I can't help, because I've been around him a lot, I can't help still liking Pete. I badly want to embrace his campaign to get reinstated, just to be a part, to be friends with baseball. And then I watched this pathetic undertaking yesterday at the Pete Rose Sports Bar and Grill on the Las Vegas Strip as he is backed by a throne. It says Throne of Hit King.
Stop, you can't
Throne
make
of
this up.
Hit King right behind him. He's not sitting on the throne. He's sitting just in front of his Throne of Hit King made of baseball bats right behind him. As all the stories pointed out, you couldn't see this on our live feed, as scantily clad employees of the restaurant walked around holding signs in support of their employer, Pete Rose. This is the scene yesterday. And then we get to his gambling. He goes through his former gambling addiction, and our new baseball commissioner, Rob Manfred, obviously voiced concern that today's Pete Rose would be able to refrain from still betting on baseball. And Pete says, no, I've gotten my old addiction under control. I've worked hard to get it under control. Then he adds that, hey, like anybody else in Las Vegas, he likes to go home every night and bet on whatever game's on TV. That doesn't sound like you have it completely under control.
Keep that to yourself.
I'm sorry, you a little too much information, Pete. So you're disqualified from having your gambling under control. You either do it or you don't. It's a form of addiction like alcoholism. You either drink or you don't drink. And in this case, he's still betting on whatever game's on that night, disqualified. And then finally, for the first time at the end of his statement that he made, as he did take some questions, Pete Rose showed the first contrition, genuine contrition, that he showed in 26 years. He finally said, hey, I was so wrong. I want to become a new role model to show the kids how not to do it. We never heard this from him. He lied and lied and lied about betting on baseball, period. Then in 2004, he comes out with a book, My Prison Without Bars, in which he divulges, or at least admits to finally, that he bet on baseball as a manager to help sell that book. And then, as we know recently, our Outside the Lines here at ESPN reported that, nope, much evidence to the contrary, that Pete Rose did bet while he was a player as well as a manager. So he's up against it here, and in the end, Stephen A., he comes across as this carnival sideshow huckster, this pathetic sort of loser who still, he wants his cake and eat it too. He wants to preserve his same lifestyle, but suddenly he's going to be contrite and say, I'm so sorry, and to reach for the grandkids who want to know that granddad is part of baseball. Pete, you should have thought about your grandkids or potential grandkids 26 years ago when you basically waged war on baseball as you lied and lied and lied about how you disrespected the game by betting on it as a player. So in the end, I have zero sympathy for him, Stephen A. And again, I found this mostly just laughable yesterday.
Well, I find nothing about this laughable. I don't find his situation laughable. He obviously brought all of this on himself. But I don't find your position and those who think like you laughable at all. I find it sad. I find it incredibly alarming that you all have such a lack of compassion. It's been 26 years. That's where I'm at. Y'all act like folks are out there saying that Pete Rose didn't do anything wrong, that he didn't lie, that he didn't gamble on baseball, that he wasn't a pathological liar. You know, y'all, that he was the greatest human being in the world, and he wasn't this acerbic individual who treated, whether it be Bart Giamatti or Faye Vincent or John Dowd, like trash. Y'all act like folks don't know that. We do know that. Nobody's absolving Pete Rose from what he did, nor the despicable human being that at least he was at a particular moment in time. Nobody's even forgetting the fact that he lied and lied and lies continuously for years, 15 and counting before the autobiography came out, and he ultimately told and acknowledged that he gambled on the sport of baseball. And we are not, oblivious to the fact that He profited off of it, and he's been profiting off of gambling and selling books and selling his signatures and other paraphernalia, outside the Hall of Fame or down the block or wherever it was in Cooperstown. We all acknowledge that. What we're saying is that who we are as a nation, who we are as people, there are individuals who never deserve forgiveness. They're usually murderers, people who have taken the lives of other people. They're not usually people who made mistakes or just seem to be bad human beings in terms of their personalities. That is the cause for us not having any kind of compassion. You actually sit there with a straight face, with no compunction, no slight scintilla of compassion whatsoever over the fact that a man has been banned for 26 years. And you can't find it in yourself when it is unquestionable what this man has done for the game of baseball from a positive perspective as well. Being Charlie Hustle, being a 17-time All-Star, being a 3-time World Series champion, being an all-time hits leader. You can laugh. I'm not laughing at all. I'm saying to you, we're talking about compassion, because what you're doing and what I'm saying to you, you are sitting there with a straight face and you're saying, I don't care about the 26 years. He needs to pay for the rest of his natural life. I have no compassion for it whatsoever. I don't care. That's what you and people who think like you are saying. And I'm saying, when I think about steroid users, when I think about criminals, when I think about violators of in regards to domestic violence, when I think about so many different things and so many different types of people we have allowed to maintain or revisit involvement in baseball, or dare I say ended up in the Hall of Fame. If I were sitting here and saying to you that Pete Rose actions were defendable, I get your point. I'm not saying that. And I don't know anybody who is. He was wrong across the board, and he's been wrong all of these years. I'm simply saying he's 74 years old. It's over. And at the end of the day, it comes down to us and our willingness to say, okay, you suffered enough. And you're not willing to do that. I am. That's all.
He's not suffering. I told you yesterday he can participate ceremonially in all kinds of baseball activities. As we know, he continues to go to Cooperstown during Hall of Fame week and hawk his signature on any memorabilia, to sell his signature. He continues to sell memorabilia in Las Vegas in his office off the strip. He gets to do whatever he wants to do, except he's not welcome back inside baseball. I don't see where that's a big problem. My prison without bars, that's not a prison. He crossed a line you cannot cross. And I don't want to get into the details of how you're threatening the very credibility of the outcomes of the games you are playing in. We're back to the Black Sox scandal of 1919. You can't come back across that line, and I applaud each of our commissioners, all the way up to Rob Manfred, for finally saying, no, I cannot lift this ban. And again, I point out what Bob Nightingale pointed out in USA Today yesterday, that once this stand is made, you have made Pete Rose the poster player for Rule 21, that you can't cross that line.
But he already is.
No,
but he already is.
He will always be. No.
Hold on. He already is.
You can't say, forgive and forget. No,
he already is. He already is, number one. Number two, he would continue to be regardless of what decision was made. Number two. Number three, as it pertains, I'm not character assassinating any of the commissioners. I'm only talking specifically as it pertains to Pete Rose. They're all cowards, because nobody wants to step up and think for themselves. I have no problem with Faye Vincent in his position. I have no problem with John Dowd in his position at the time, because they were directly involved. But when you look at Bud Selig and you look at a Rob Manfred, it's almost like a Supreme Court justice, Skip, continuously leaning on the rulings and the opinions of our forefathers to the point, and they always do it, don't get me wrong, but not to the point where there's no wiggle room whatsoever for things to be modified based on the changing times, some of the things we experience, some of the things we've realized that in its own way are just as, or in some people's eyes, even more egregious than his actions. I am simply saying it is no longer about Pete Rose. It's no longer about what he has done, because we know it and we know how unacceptable it is, and as well as everybody else. At some point, it becomes about you and what your level of compassion is. The man is 74. He did a lot of good things for the game, too. And all I'm saying is, yeah, he could make his money, he could do this, he could do that. We also saw in their report where they specifically acknowledged that there was some leniency, that they were willing to extend his way if he had been forthcoming and were willing to admit his quote-unquote addiction. Well, we got sex addicts, we got drug addicts, we got alcoholics. When you have an addiction, we have been taught it is a problem. And if it is a problem, then he had the problem. So we have no compassion. It's about us now. It's about our lack of compassion. It ain't about him. We know how bad he was. But the lack of compassion from people like you and who thinks like you is very alarming.
That's absurd.
It's very alarming.
That's offensive to anybody who loves the game of baseball. That's what that is.
So you're trying to say
no compassion
it's insulting?
for that. For that?
All right, you don't have any
compassion. This is a bad guy who had no respect for the game that made him what he was.
But steroid users did when they were cheating?
That's a whole other issue. We're talking about Pete Rose here.
I'm just saying the point that you brought up about respecting the game.
At least they were trying to win. I'm not sure Pete was always trying to win.
By cheating? That's what they were doing?
Okay. But, I mean, we can do degrees of sins here. This is a
that's
big
all I'm
one.
saying.
This is at the top of my list.
And I know it's a big one. But listen, we're not having this discussion if it wasn't 26 years, Skip. It didn't just happen yesterday.
Okay. Remember, he got his audience with the new commissioner, and we didn't hear any of that. The commissioner didn't hear what you heard yesterday. He was shocked that the ban was retained by the new commissioner. It goes on, and that's probably the end of it. That's probably the last shot he's going to get. And so he was shocked into, now I'm going to be contrite and put on a big show yesterday at the Pete Rose Sports Bar and Grill.
Press conference.
Way to
go.
What?
I don't care about his press conference. I care about what the facts are.
Yeah.
And it comes down to our compassion. Here's the last thing I'm going to say. I'm going to watch baseball very, very closely, more so than I ever have in my life. And I'm not talking about on the court, on the field stuff. I'm talking about beyond the playing field. Because since so many people want to walk around and have no compassion whatsoever, we're going to see how it feels when it's extended to an abundance of people moving forward. I have compassion. It's sad to see that you guys don't.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Spare me your self-righteousness. Thank you.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Spare me.
All right, so
Spare
this
me.
just
I'd rather have a heart than be heartless.
Stephen A. and Skip on opposite ends of the spectrum with Pete Rose.
You're damn right we are.
After hearing him speak yesterday at his press conference. Earlier in the show, we asked our Twitter followers which player they would rather have, DeMarcus Cousins or Dwight Howard. And drumroll, the results are in. Stephen A. thought it'd be 100%. Cousins? It is not. It's 89% Cousins, 11%.
What?
Still going with Howard.
11%?
11%.
Wow.
Stephen A. Smith, did our Twitter followers get it right?
Of course they didn't. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. How can you know basketball and 11% of you would pick Dwight Howard over DeMarcus Cousins at this juncture? If this were the Dwight Howard in Orlando, to a lesser degree the Dwight Howard in Los Angeles, I understand that. And this is not to knock Dwight Howard. It's to elevate DeMarcus Cousins. Do you have any idea how big time this brother really is? That he's 6'11", about 270 to 280, can play with his back to the basket, can face the basket, can put the ball on the floor, can shoot perimeter shots, can hit free throws. Do you know who he is? Do you know that DeMarcus Cousins averages 25 and 10? Do you know that this brother can walk around in his sleep averaging 24 and 12? Do you have any idea how big time this brother is as a big man in the game of basketball? I don't understand how anybody watching the game of basketball over the last couple of years can reach the conclusion that DeMarcus Cousins would take a backseat to Dwight Howard. That 11%, whoever they are, should be banned from participating in any polls because they're clearly ignorant from Houston or Orlando or parts of Atlanta, which is where Dwight Howard comes from, or they're relatives of the Howard family, because nothing else makes sense to that argument. Not if you know basketball. DeMarcus Cousins is a superior player to Dwight Howard as of right now. Not saying it can't change, not saying it would have been that way years ago, but right now, he is clearly a superior big man to Dwight Howard. Anybody who says differently, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't know basketball.
Wonder how many times Dwight voted. Wonder how many times his crew voted or his family voted. I'm just curious. Could they mount an 11% response? I don't know. It's possible. It's also possible.
That depends. If we asked 20 people, they could.
Yeah, that's true. It's also possible 11% voted just to spite you after your salvo early in the show, in which you called them idiots if they even considered voting, right, for Dwight Howard.
Well, they know where to catch me. Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82, 1 to 3 p.m. every day, every weekday, Eastern Time. I'm not hard to find. Not today, though. Not today. I'll be busy, but any other day.
They can just hit you up on Twitter because we know you read all of your responses on Twitter, right?
I actually don't. I started following your lead.
Oh,
I've cut
really?
back on that
Good for you. Wow.
Oh, yeah, I don't have that. Listen, I'm a busy man. I'm busy doing things.
You're rehabilitating yourself. That's good. I like it.
Well, that too.
Yeah. So the bottom line to this is, isn't it amazing how if we had taken the same poll, let's just say a year ago, wouldn't the tables have turned completely? Wouldn't Dwight have won this poll by 89% a year ago? Maybe.
No.
Given all DeMarcus's issues and his his inability to control his emotions.
I was
and
just
his
talking about the game.
No, I know.
I was just talking about the game.
But again. Given all that he was going through at that point, and Dwight was still, a year ago today, I think most people thought he was still Dwight. I'm with you, be it injury, attrition, whatever it is, just sort of losing spirit in Houston. I don't know why, but slowly but surely, we've lost Dwight. You know, he's just not the same guy anymore, which is why I concluded to start the show. I'm just not sure how much market value he really has anymore, even though he's only 30 years of age. And as I pointed out, Kareem played at a pretty high level into his early 40s. So Dwight still could have a lot of good basketball left in him.
I think he does still have a lot of good basketball and potentially great basketball, but I think Dwight Howard has to be committed to winning. I think he has to get an attitude about coming up short. I think he has to elevate to a level where it hurts him not to be called a champion. He really needs to get nasty about it, and he just seems too comfortable with it right now.
There you see it. A Manziel signed $100 bill already has an offer of $1,000. Skip?
Wow.
What do you make of this?
You know, Stephen A., this tells me that as much as Johnny has struggled, that he still remains as captivating a player to watch and to follow as anybody in the National Football League.
Well, he's captivating, particularly to anybody watching the Browns, because they have nothing else captivating. That's number one. Number two, you see the odds being stacked against him, and he's miniature, so you find yourself rooting for him because he's also exciting, but he still has to be productive. Everybody knows that, and they think there's still a chance he will be.
Yeah, there's still a lot of Johnny football left in Johnny Manziel.
And there's a lot of Johnny football fans, clearly.
Yep.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for being with us.
All righty.
Appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. Catch First Take weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, in the re-air at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN 2.
The Big 12, an SEC collide at the All-State Sugar Bowl. Number 16, Oklahoma State. Number 12, Ole Miss. Coverage begins New Year's Day at 8:30 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.